From MTN News, this is Montana This Morning.
Good Monday morning. It's 5:30. Welcome to Montana This Morning. I'm Victoria Hill. Thank you so much for starting your day with us. And we would also like to thank the one and only chief meteorologist here at KTVQ in Billings, Montana, the one and only Ed McIntosh.
It's a treat to be here with everybody today.
He's saying that. He's just saying that. You worked last night.
I did.
You did the evening shows, filling in on the weekend there, and then we gave you a call at 4:30 this morning saying,
"You guys
Ed,
are such kidders.
We need you."
Oh.
We just wanted to put him to the test. No, Miller wasn't feeling so good this morning, and so went home. Hopefully he's resting up and feeling better. And here we have Ed. Just how many hours of sleep did you get?
Hours?
Hour? Half hour? Maybe? But anyways, thank you so much for coming in.
Yeah,
it's good to have you here, and good to see you this morning. And got everything all ready to go for the shows?
Yeah, it's going to be a busy weather day for us. Let's start off by just talking about a little bit today, mainly about wind, much as we saw yesterday. But now we're talking about a colder wind rather than a warmer wind. And then things really get pretty nice as we start getting closer to the weekend. But we got a lot to deal with here first thing today. With the temperatures at 48, you think that sounds pretty good, but the wind gusts up to 49 miles an hour. A cold front's moving through and the wind shifting. So while the temperatures across the region are now into the anywhere from 20s, 30s on the cold side of that line, you can see where that line of snow showers is moving through to the temperatures in the 50s as once we get into the eastern plains. That front will move across the region today, bringing a quick shot of moisture with it, and then it will leave us windy for the rest of the day. The high temperatures will move up only into the 40s, so pretty much what you see is what you get as we start getting later into the day. The wind and temperatures much cooler than we saw yesterday. We'll break down the rest of the forecast details in a little while.
All right, it's going to feel a bit odd, but we'll go with it. Thank you so much, Ed.
Thanks.
We begin with tragic news out of Carbon County. The body of a 1-year-old girl has been recovered from the Clarks Fork River in a drowning accident. The toddler was from out of state and visiting relatives near Fromberg. She was swept downstream and found by a family member under the East River Road Bridge yesterday afternoon. The family member began performing CPR on shore. First responders continued CPR when they arrived, but the girl was pronounced dead on scene. Authorities are still investigating, but no foul play is suspected. A convicted serial killer who abused at least 3 children, murdering 2 of them, has died from brain cancer. Joseph Duncan was awaiting execution in a federal prison in Indiana. In 1997, he tortured and killed 10-year-old Anthony Martinez in Beaumont, California. Duncan escaped to Idaho, where he kidnapped 9-year-old Dylan Groney and his 8-year-old sister, Shasta. He took the children to St. Regis, Montana, where he sexually assaulted them before shooting Dylan in the head. 2 weeks later, a waitress at a Denny's in Idaho recognized Duncan and Shasta, and he was taken into custody. He was sentenced to death in 2008. Millions who have been demanding justice for George Floyd get their day in court today as the trial of his accused killer gets underway. CBS's Skylar Henry has more.
Opening statements begin this morning in the trial of a former police officer accused of killing George Floyd. Derek Chauvin has pleaded not guilty to murder and manslaughter charges stemming from Floyd's death on May 25th. A bystander's video shows Floyd on the ground and in handcuffs, with Chauvin's knee on his neck for roughly 9 minutes.
Breathe! Breathe!
The incident sparked worldwide outrage and months of protests demanding justice. Floyd's brother joined supporters at another rally last night.
I have faith that he will get convicted. Just like everybody who's seen that video, because the video is the proof.
Here in Minneapolis, authorities are bracing for possible unrest surrounding the trial, which will be broadcast live from inside of the courtroom. An attorney for Floyd's family predicted the defense would try to smear the victim.
Because he had a trace amount of drugs found in his system. They're saying, oh, that's what killed him, not what Derek Chauvin did.
Chauvin and 3 other officers were fired the day after Floyd's death. The others are charged with aiding and abetting murder and manslaughter and are due to stand trial in August. Skylar Henry, CBS News, Minneapolis.
Jury selection, which resulted in a racially diverse panel, took 11 days. The trial is expected to last up to 4 weeks. Now we go to the latest on the pandemic. The World Health Organization teamed up with China to release a new report on the origin of COVID-19. It says transmission of the virus from bats to humans through another animal was the most likely cause. The report also claims a lab leak is extremely unlikely. The report's release has been repeatedly delayed, leading many to believe China is trying to skew the conclusion of the report to prevent blame from falling on the country. The full report is expected to be released in the next few days. This as cases here in the U.S. are trending in the wrong direction. CNN's Britt Conway has a look at what's causing the recent rise and what it's going to take to get that case count turned around.
New cases of COVID-19 are on the rise again. Doctors Ashish Jha, Anthony Fauci, and Scott Gottlieb caution that it's up to us to keep this rise from shifting to a surge. Now, variants are playing a part in the case count.
This is basically what we were all saying was going to happen around the second half of March.
The variant first identified in the UK is more contagious and now likely to become dominant, but it's not the only reason behind the rise.
What we're likely seeing is because of things like spring break and pulling back on the mitigation methods that you've seen now. Several states have done that.
A lot of the spread is happening among younger people, 10 to 19, but also 20 to 29. That's the group that is moving around, kind of relaxed and getting infected.
Experts say it's not time to relax yet. We need to hold on to our masks, avoid crowds, and hold off on travel until we can get more people vaccinated, especially in areas with rising case counts.
I think what we need to do is try to continue to vaccinate, surge vaccine into those parts of the country. So the incremental vaccine that's coming onto the market, I think the Biden administration can allocate it to parts of the country that look hot right now.
Then it comes down to patience.
We're weeks away from a point where we can begin to do these things a bit more safely.
But if we could just get 2 or 3 more weeks of around 3 million vaccines a day, that's going to be a pretty big backstop against a true fourth surge.
I'm Britt Conway reporting.
President Joe Biden says he'll meet with advisors today to get a better sense of the COVID-19 situation. He was asked about indications new infections have been on the rise, and the president said a number of Americans are apparently letting their guard down. And President Biden feels confident the U.S. will get more strict on gun laws. The issue is once again in the spotlight following the recent shootings in Atlanta and Colorado. The president says he's willing to work with Republicans on a bill that includes universal background checks.
Of course I am. I'm the only one that's ever gotten passed, man. Everybody keeps wondering whether I'm scared about dealing with rational gun control. The only gun control legislation ever passed is mine. It's going to happen again.
The president was talking about the Brady bill. It requires background checks be conducted on individuals before a firearm can be purchased from a federally licensed dealer and has been law since 1994. Less than 3 weeks after signing a nearly $2 trillion COVID-19 relief law, President Biden is set to unveil the second big legislative push of his administration, infrastructure reform. But as CNN's John Lawrence reports, this proposal may be a little more difficult to pass because it includes a major tax increase.
The Biden administration's Build Back Better package calls for roughly $3 trillion worth of new spending. The president's plan is comprised of 2 separate proposals. The first focuses on improving U.S. infrastructure like highways and bridges.
We shouldn't be 13th in the world. I don't think anyone believes that.
Home-based issues are included in the second part to be announced in April.
Healthcare, childcare, addressing that. It's a crisis right now. The number of women who have left the workforce, he wants to help to address that.
Biden says the Build Back Better plan will create millions of jobs while giving America's working families the tools, choices, and freedom needed to boost the U.S. economy. It also calls for hundreds of billions in tax credits, something Republicans in D.C. are pouncing on.
A so-called infrastructure proposal that may actually be a Trojan horse for massive tax hikes and other job-killing left-wing policies.
Others are concerned about the project's price tag.
Once you go into we're just going to raise corporate tax rates, that's going to be tough because right now infrastructure is funded by the gas tax. So we have to have a discussion about that.
I'm John Lawrence reporting.
White House aides say the tax increases will target corporations and the wealthy without affecting Americans who make less than $400,000 per year. And as Congress considers $305 billion in legislation to improve and expand roadways, rail lines could also get a boost. For one Montana community, if rail money comes through, it could be a game changer. CBS's Errol Barnett has more.
Much has changed in Deer Lodge, Montana since it lost its Amtrak service 40 years ago.
We had so many railroad people living here and working here. And there's no job for them on the railroad now. This was a bar. It's gone.
Mayor Diana Soul watched over time as the population dropped from 5,000 to almost half that.
This was just such a nice town, a great place to raise your kids. It became a ghost town when it emptied.
Deer Lodge was on Amtrak's North Coast Hiawatha line, connecting Chicago to Seattle. It's just one of more than 100 places that have lost passenger service. Long gone, too, are visitors supporting the town's 5 Old West museums, its restaurants, or traveling to the Rocky and Bitterroot Mountains.
It's my heritage. It's my dad and grandpa ran these, so yeah.
Terry Jennings is on a mission to bring passenger rail service back here and across southern Montana.
This is actually where you used to stand and wait for the train.
He's director of the Big Sky Passenger Rail Authority, which has a plan and political support.
It's going to happen. I'm very confident in that. And I'd say, best case 3 years.
In Washington, D.C., Jim Matthews, the CEO of the Rail Passengers Association, is helping, a lobbyist reading the moment.
President Biden's nickname is Amtrak Joe. How palpable is the sense of optimism now with a President Biden in office?
There's tremendous optimism. You have an entire team of people that have come into Washington that are committed to really advancing rail as a practical mode of transportation in this country.
There are more than 30 proposed new or revived passenger routes between Mobile, Alabama and New Orleans, linking Pueblo, Colorado to Fort Collins through Denver, and Atlanta to Charlotte, to name a few.
There are plenty of communities that are cut off from the rest of the country, and connecting them to the opportunities that exist.
Back in Deer Lodge, Elizabeth Roth McKee at the used furniture store has her own vision.
This block could be a coffee shop. This block could be more retail. This block could be a drop-off daycare center.
Now, Amtrak has been devastated by the pandemic, particularly along its busy Northeast corridor connecting Washington to Boston. But ridership is returning. And Amtrak CEO promises a visionary plan to expand service nationwide is coming. The question is, will there be money to fund it? Errol Barnett, CBS News, Washington.
And now we go to the Suez Canal, where the giant cargo ship stuck for the better part of the week is free. CBS's Naomi Reckham has the latest as traffic is expected to resume this morning at one of the busiest trade routes in the world.
After days lodged in one of the world's most crucial waterways, the enormous Ever Given container ship is finally moving again. Egypt's presidential advisor for canal projects says the entire ship is now dislodged from the shore and back in the water. Satellite data shows the ship clear from the banks after a dozen tugboats pushed and pulled on the near quarter-mile-long ship, and several dredgers vacuumed more than 27,000 cubic meters of sand and mud from under the vessel. Soon, investigators will begin looking into how this catastrophe happened.
Was it a mechanical failure? Was it operator error? Is it because of maintenance that wasn't done on the vessel? Or was it, crew fatigue?
The disaster has already been traumatic for economies around the world. Every day the canal was blocked meant roughly $10 billion in lost revenue.
Each that it's a boat. All those ships are waiting to cross the canal.
The Suez Canal is one of the busiest trade routes in the world, serving as a passageway for natural gas, oil, livestock, and consumer products like clothing, furniture, car parts, and exercise equipment. The blockage impacted the supply of everything from oil to coffee to even toilet paper. Naomi Ruckham, CBS News.
The Suez Canal carries more than 10% of global trade, including 7% of the world's oil. While hundreds of ships are waiting to pass, others have taken an alternate route around Africa, adding 2 weeks to their planned routes. Also making headlines this morning, at least 4 deaths have been reported as a powerful storm rolled through Tennessee, damaging homes and flooding parts of the state. This weekend marked Nashville's second highest 2-day rainfall ever. The mayor declared a state of emergency. It's the 3rd time in a week areas in the South have been hit by severe weather. Here in Montana, winds are the issue. People in Blackfoot near Browning are allowed to return to their homes after briefly being evacuated for a wildfire. It grew to more than 25,000 acres as crews battled wind gusts over 80 miles per hour. The winds also kicked up dust and dirt and forced the closure of a nearby highway. There were several crashes reported, but no serious injuries. And in lighter news, in Europe, time jumped ahead 1 hour over the weekend. We all know changing clocks can be a bit of a hassle, but imagine what a job it is for a clock collector who had hundreds to shift yesterday. CBS's Tina Kraus has a story.
74-year-old Werner Steckbart never seems to have enough hands. I once tried to get a cleaner to dust my clocks, he says, but they took one look at all these and said no. The German clock collector has 365 unique timepieces, ticking inside his tiny apartment in Munich. He says, my clocks are the love of my life. I love them above all else. When I was young and beautiful, he says, I'd host clock parties with friends to get some help. But these days, I do it all alone. And he takes his time, carefully caressing each clock as he goes. He says most are gifts from his mother, who started his collection and told him time goes faster than you think. And while he may be in a race against time twice a year, Steckbart says he enjoys every minute of it. Tina Kraus, CBS News.
Well, he's not hosting a clock party, but he's hosting a weather party. Ed, what's going on?
We got a lot of wind. The temperatures this morning are going to be as warm as that we have all day, and then the temperatures just sort of level off into the 40s and get cooler by the time we get into the evening and overnight hours of tonight. And today we're talking about National Vietnam War Veterans Day.
And I was just looking at some of the numbers. So today is the day the U.S. withdrew from the Vietnam War, and it was actually an 11-year campaign. You know, when you look back at the numbers, you just realize how massive and significant this was. 2.7 million American men and women served, over 58,000 deaths, and to this day, 850,000 Vietnam vets are still alive. So we thank them for their service.
Absolutely, because we didn't at the time. I mean, it was a real concern.
That is just mind-blowing. When I learned that in school, I was like, what? How? I don't know. Don't get me started, Ed. Just don't get me started. But yes, so we thank them for their service and their commitment to our country. We do appreciate it.
That is for sure.
And we appreciate you, Ed, for coming in after a quick turnaround from last night.
Yeah, well, I want to come in and talk about this moon. We got a full moon. It's the full worm moon this time of the year, because the earthworms start coming up and then the spring birds come to feed on the, that's what starts spring. That really is, it has nothing else to do with the sky or the weather or anything else. Wind gusts right now at 49 miles per hour at 48 degrees. The winds are shifting now more northwesterly, but the strong winds are going to be the biggest part of the weather as we make our way through the day today. Those strong wind gusts behind along this cold front. Now the front's just come through the Billings area, and these showers are coming in behind it, and they're going to push across southeastern Montana as we start getting later into the day now. As the cold front shifts through, it's going to bring these periods of wind, and in some cases, especially for eastern Montana, we're talking about stronger winds than we were yesterday when we had all the fire weather concerns. So as the showers come through, temperatures are in the 20s and 30s on the cold side of the state. Now the warm side of things, we're at 58 in Sheridan this morning, 49 for you in Miles City, but only 31 in Livingston. Some wet roadways. Livingston Bozeman Pass looks like a little bit of a problem right now. As we take a look across the state, some of those wind gusts are hitting 40 plus miles per hour. Lewistown over towards Great Falls. Certainly here in Billings we have the strong winds. Also, no big surprise, we have some strong winds for you in Livingston as well. And we could be seeing some of those winds continuing to at least hold back the chance of showers as it dries the air out once it comes down the east slopes. The strong winds, we've seen a couple of areas where the high wind warnings have dropped, but also some wintry weather conditions around Great Falls this morning. Here's how it looks. The cold front shifts through. It brings the cooler air along with it. With that shift in the winds today, we'll continue to look at some windy periods heading into tomorrow as well. But the warmer and drier conditions will start to move in behind it. And once the temperatures begin to warm, we're going to continue to see those temperatures really edge up here as we get later into the week. So for today, the temperatures just kind of flatline and stay basically where they are this morning, or even get a little cooler. The best chance of showers moves through during the morning hours, and then we'll start to see that ease up once we get into the afternoon and evening. Tomorrow's breezy, but we're still in the 40s for the highs. Overnight temperatures are only in the 20s. 50s on Wednesday. That's sort of a transition day. Could be a little breezy on Thursday, but check out those temperatures. They continue to warm. So once we get through this blustery weather, we've got some very warm and dry conditions to follow. There's more after this.